We wanted to see if there are any lingering questions about logistics, about the scholarship itself, anything along those lines before we get into the writing component of the session. Aaron, is that how you say it, Aaron?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
perfect. Sorry. So I had the last minute question since we're getting approaching the end of the quarter and we're gonna be heading to asking letters of recommendation. So first question I had, so automatically I've been approved with the offer pre-authorization for Goldwater, right? But I'm not sure if the emails have been automatically sent to those three faculty that I nominated. So I'm not sure like if that's a component of the application itself, because on the application that I'm looking at, pretty much I finished 80% of it. And there's a section called let me see what section that is called. Well, I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was a section to edit those recommenders. So I don't know, every time we edit those, like are the emails being sent out to them? That was my first question. Second, I was wondering that who's going to be able to send the transcripts because we're authorized to send out an official transcript. Is that going to be the CR doing that, or is CR the, I think, campus representative? Or is that going to be something redoing it or resending it to CR? I don't know how does that work. And yeah, that's about it. That's about it. Yeah. Oh, and one specific question. Does the three recommenders have to be definitely your faculty mentor? Because I recently, pretty much I started my experience like a year and a half ago, but I did not have like that much of a significant publication that came out with my name. So I'm kind of like hindering from asking my mentor, my PI, for a letter yet, because I think that's like too much. But I have like multiple other faculties who I worked with and who I presented posters in their classes. And I'm not sure if that works as like three recommenders, or there should be definitely one who is a PI or a research mentor.
Okay, lots of different questions. Aaron, you and I have not yet met yet. We will be meeting on Monday. So with that, I think we can answer a lot of these questions. But briefly, your first question was trying to remember about should you be reaching out to your letter writer? Oh, is there an automatic email that goes out to your letter writers? And it is not an auto email. In this case, it's actually sent by the campus representative, Dr. Artis. And so I'm not sure where he is in the process of sending out these requests, but I know that he does do that periodically. And so you should kind of have a solid list of who your letter writers are by the time you have them in the pre-application. And ideally, because it's only a few weeks away, the deadline, you should be asking your letter writers now if they would be willing to write. And if they aren't, you'll have to go in to talk to Dr. Artist to have those names changed. They have to actually be rejected in the system. And then they'll be have to be changed that way. So it's a process. It's not automated. So just so you know, with the letter writers, it isn't something that just as soon as you put in the email, an email goes out to them, like other applications sometimes. And in this case, Dr. Artist collects those letters and then uploads them into the system as long as the faculty are willing to write the letter. So that's the letter writer question. And remind me the second question.
Transcripts.
Transcripts. Okay, so transcripts, actually, I appreciate you sending yours to me already. It's not necessary for you to get them. We actually collect them for you on your behalf, if we select you as a nominee. So that's not something you actually have to worry about. I appreciate you sending it for us, and hopefully you get nominated and we'll be able to include that in your application packet. But you don't need to worry too much about that unless you have, say, like a transcript from community college. That might be something that we may need. But even then, a lot of that is in your academic history and part of your transcript if you've been able to transfer those courses over. So yeah, I think with a transcript, I wouldn't worry too much about that. We'll take care of that on your behalf by requesting them from the registrar. And then third question.
Oh, I even forgot the third question myself.
It had something to do with the faculty, is what I
Oh yeah.
recall.
But two little questions between what you raised, the nomination. So how does that work? Like, is it going to be a further different thing? Because I already started doing the application.
No, you should be working on the application. And part of this might be because we haven't met yet, and so a lot of these questions are usually answered in my one-on-ones with individual students that apply.
Oh,
So we will talk more about this on Monday. So I might say let's defer that because some of the other students that are here have already been speaking with me and they understand the process. And so I want to conserve the time for what we're aiming for today, which is the writing workshop. And just in case you don't know me yet, I am Dr. Sophia Taineri, and I am with Undergrad Research Hub. My title is Research Scholarships Coordinator, but I help oversee the prestigious scholarships that we have here on campus. And usually I'm kind of the frontline first person that you might meet with a lot of these different scholarships to get a basic understanding of how they work and what is the process. And then at a certain point, I pass you on to Dr. Artis if he's the campus nominator for the particular scholarship that you're applying for. So we certainly have more information coming up, but let's focus maybe on the writing session if that's okay. But if there are additional questions, I'll try my best to answer. I can only stay for a few more minutes. But yeah, if there are questions that I can help answer, please feel free. And I'll send Dr. Artis's email when we talk on Monday. So don't worry about that as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dr. Zaineri. Okay, so today we want to focus on writing, and I wanted to give you, because we have a small group, I'm kind of excited to hear where you all are at so it can be a little bit catered to your process. So before we get into the session, I do want to introduce myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Maggie. I am the coordinator of the LATS writing program at Oasis. You see this picture of this cute crow here because this is our mascot. His name's Edgar Allan Crow. So he's our official mascot at LATS. But anything writing related at Oasis, I'm in charge of. So I'm so excited to be partnering with URH because so many of the amazing opportunities, it's not that it's gate kept, like it's not a gatekeeping thing, but the writing in an application for all these amazing opportunities is an area that's overlooked. People don't put as much time into the writing as they should, because really the writing could be the thing that sets your application apart. So we want to give you that time to think through, how should I be writing this? Because honestly, there are many different types of writing. And I feel like there's an opportunity on this campus, because we're such a STEM focused campus, to encourage students to think about writing in different ways. Because I know, I'm not trying to overgeneralize, but with some STEM students, it's kind of like, oh, I'm not good at writing, I'm better at STEM. And so you don't really think about writing, but that is really a missed opportunity. And writing something for an application process such as this one requires kind of a different mindset than what you would write for your Muir college writing program or Warren college writing program or any other writing assignment, right? It takes a different kind of mindset. And I feel like when people know that, they'll take a lot of frustration and uncertainty and doubt out of the writing process. So that's what this is intended to do. Okay, so first I want to ask y'all, because we are a small group, so you can come off camera or just put it in the chat. Where are you in the process? Have you started writing? Have you not even thought about the writing? Do you already have a research project in mind and you need to just adjust the writing? Where are we at in the process? So let's just take a moment to either put in the chat or just come off mic and say it the old-fashioned way. Just say it.
I guess I'll just say it.
Yes.
I think I am actually very behind on the process because I didn't realize there was a pre-application. I thought I could just do the application. So then I only did that a week or two ago. And then I had finals, so I haven't had time to think about my essays and stuff at all.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I know there's a part of that feels like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. But I kind of feel like, no, that's why we're here. We want to be your support system for that. Don't feel like you're oh, I can't get this done, because there's still time. Thanks for sharing, Emily.
And actually, if I'm going to pipe in real quick, I just wanted to mention you're not behind. I think a lot of students, whether they started, 3 months ago or, this week today, they're all probably waiting for winter break to focus on the essays. So it's not an issue that you haven't really thought about what they are. That's exactly what the session is for, is to help you feel empowered and ready, a little bit more set in the process. And hopefully we'll hear from other students like where they are. But my feeling is a lot of people are kind of in a similar space. So don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Erin or Kalisa, could you share?
Okay, so I finished the future directions, aspirations, I finished the diversity statement, I finished the honors and awards, extracurricular section. So I'm good at those, like especially the future and aspiration part was like a many multiple different short essays to write, but what I'm looking specifically into is the research essay, which
Mhm.
is I don't know like what exactly they want. Like I was reading like one of the bloggers like on that Google that she got nominated for this and she was talking about a whole design of writing a research statement, like research essay, my bad, like from her results, from her methods, from conclusions, hypothesis. So I'm not really not sure really how to approach the research aspect of the writing this scholarship application.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Sai.
Yeah, so just with regards to that, I think a lot of students, when they're working on the application, are uncertain, you know. But one of the biggest questions that I think you should decide is, are you writing about research that you have already completed? Or are you going to write a research proposal? Because it can't be both, it's one or the other. And just so you know, there is no preference by the Goldwater Foundation, whether you write about something that has already happened and you participated in, or if it's something that you have like discussed with maybe your mentor and it's something that you're about to do, or maybe it's something that you think just is a fantastic idea based on your experience in doing research and you think, let's try this random experiment. You know, this is my question and this is how I want to approach it. So it's kind of this wide field, but I do highly recommend that you do work with your research mentors, whether that's a grad student, a postdoc, your PI. Those people are experts in your field. They can make sure that you are writing and explaining something technically correctly. And so that's the side of things that may be slightly different from what Maggie is supporting and in writing. But I think that they can help make sure that what you're submitting makes sense to someone in the field, because that's who will be reading your Goldwater application if you do get nominated, is someone familiar with your field. So you can write more in detail about that. And I do see Calissa has written some information in the chat too.
Okay, I've started writing the research essay, but I'm still a little uncertain about how I want to format it. Okay, great. Thank you everybody for sharing. I'm going to answer, I want to respond to stuff that has been said, but I want us to also think about this question as well. Sorry, because this is so much about the writing process. Like, how do you feel about like doing this kind of writing? Sorry, there's a typo. How do you feel about doing this kind of writing? Like this, research essay, like, do you feel uncertain? Do you feel confident? Do you feel like, what are your feelings around it? Because I feel like when we kind of um are intentional about like our feelings around it, then we can be a little bit more in control. Like if you're like, oh no, I'm feeling a little uncertain, once we can identify that, then we can kind of figure out like, why are I feeling uncertain? So I want to get like some feelings, like how do you feel about this type of writing? I feel like this is like different, right? You don't do this in school, you don't do this for courses, so it is a new genre. So yeah, what are some thoughts, Dr. Sai?
Actually, I wanted to mention, we also have another student, Audrey, who maybe hasn't mentioned kind of where they are in the process.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
sorry. I just
Yeah.
started too.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that at least hopefully that makes people feel that you're all in the same boat. And that feels a little bit more comfortable. And I see another follow-up question from Erin.
Hmm. Can include multiple, just a follow-up question. The research activity section can include multiple research we did, completed and ongoing, but the essay itself should only include one of both in case of mine, as I finished a summer internship research and I have ongoing research.
Correct. Yeah, when you're writing, you were limited to 3 pages anyways, so it doesn't make sense to write about multiple projects.
Hmm.
So I think that even though you're talking about what you've done in the past in part of your application, for the actual research essay, I recommend just writing about one project. And you can choose whichever one you want. If you're talking about something that you've done before. And then there's always, of course, the option of doing something that's a proposal where you're suggesting something that hasn't yet been done.
Yeah. I think this is so this is what I wanted to respond to as people were saying like where they were in the process. This is a really good time to talk about different genres. And I think genres as it pertains to what scholarships ask of you. So sometimes I think people think of like the writing portion of a scholarship application all the same way, right? Like, oh, I just have to write about myself. But really it's like if we can figure out what the genre is, then we can figure out what the audience and the purpose is. It's a slightly different audience. So let me give you an example. So they're asking for a research essay, right? Let's compare that to a personal statement. So a personal statement, the genre of personal statement is to show like your personal background, how it relates to your goals, your future goals, and that institution or that scholarship opportunity, right? That's a personal statement. A research essay is something that shows that you have some expertise, some level of expertise in research, right? It shows that you're working on something or are thinking about working on something. It displays that you have the curiosity. It displays that you have the drive, the determination. So in just comparing these two different genres, they have different purposes, right? One is to show your personal background, one is to show that you have some level of expertise in research. So I really want to highlight like, okay, we have to be really clear on the genre of writing because that will clear up for us what the parameters of the assignment are, right? So yeah, I just want to point out that research essay is kind of like this newer one. Like I've helped a lot of students with different types of writing, like, oh, personal statement for Fulbright, or like tell us why you deserve the scholarship. Those types of writing assignments or writing projects are really straightforward, right? But a research essay is interesting because you almost have to have like a certain commentary about it, right? For instance, Erin, if you were to write about something, a research project that you did in the summer, you almost have to write it from the perspective of, this is what I learned. This is what I want to do with it in the future. This is how it's helped me. This is how it's helped me grow, so it's not exactly a personal statement. So I think like the first step in just like figuring out what the genre of the writing that they're asking of you is going to be really helpful in clearing a lot of things up, because that's what makes a lot of people like very nervous about writing for these types of opportunities, right? Because you're uncertain, you're not quite sure like what I think it was Kalisa was saying, like you're not quite sure how to format it. It's because we're not quite sure what the genre is. So I think like I hope like the skills that I talk about are applicable to not only Goldwater, but other opportunities as well. So we're going to talk about this technique called reverse outlining. So I love this technique. I'm actually a writer outside of my job, and whenever I feel stuck, whenever I have writer's block, I use this technique. So it's a technique for examining content, organization, and structure. A lot of times when we write, especially students, we're just like reading for content, right? Like, what is this piece of writing saying? But what reverse outlining forces you to do is examine, like, how does this writer put these ideas together? How are they formatting it? How are they structuring it? So I wanted just for us to go through like a very like an exercise, like how to reverse outline something together. Because the goal is once you are good at reverse outlining, then you can go online like Erin has done, right? Googled like successful Goldwater scholarships, scholarship essays. Then you see how they structure their writing. And if you can reverse outline it, then you can apply it to yourself. Okay, so we're gonna do like a little exercise together. So here is a personal statement that a former student has written. So I've anonymized everything. It's very short. It's 4 paragraphs. So can you tell me can you all read that? Is that too hard to read, or is that okay? Can you just say in the chat? okay. It's too small. You can read it. Okay, good. Okay. So I'm just going to go with what Emily says. I'm going to assume that you all can read it. Okay. So this is a different genre than what you're doing. Research essay is different, but the activity will still help us. Okay. So I want you to take 5 minutes and I want you to read through this personal statement. Okay. So I'm going to turn my camera off. When I come back on, that's when we're going to discuss it. Okay. So take the next 5 minutes to read through this personal statement. It's 4 paragraphs. Okay. I will see you in 5 minutes. Okay, great. Looks like everybody's done. Okay, so you read this, you probably read it for content, but reverse outline, remember I said it forces you to look at like the structure and how this writer put this together. So we're going to go through each paragraph and then so I'm going to answer the questions, not only what is it about, but like how does this writer put this paragraph together? Okay, so um before I dive in, just any initial thoughts on this personal statement? Is this something, does this seem familiar? Is this something you feel like you would write? I just wanted to get like some initial thoughts about reading through this personal statement. Yes, Erin.
So what I think about this, I see a trend, right? It starts from the childhood, that,
Yeah.
the interaction with the father, and goes to high school and goes to college. I see a very good trend. But what I'm getting lost here is the trend
Mhm.
is not making sense to me itself. Trend is
Mhm.
too general. It's too broad. And at
Mhm.
the end, it goes over saying, okay, I believe Johns Hopkins is why your desired university.
Mhm.
The last statement seems like it reminds me of my college personal statements where
Uh-huh.
I just wrote down a whole entire similar thing in all of them, and
Yeah.
at the last statement I was like, okay, this is why Brown University is the university I want to go.
Yeah.
So very, very superficial.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. You bring up such a good point. So I feel like it is very natural that people write in a chronological order. And this is why it's good to talk about writing, right? Because it forces you to be like, oh, do I write like that? It's very natural that your first instinct is to write something in chronological order. Is it the most effective? I say no. I say what's more effective is to write thematically, like write around themes. But Erin, you're absolutely right in that this is chronological order. This is, me as a little girl, then high school, then college. This is why I want to get into grad school. And when we are able to look at something like, oh, that's her structure. The structure is chronological. I think this is a good exercise to do with bad writing and good writing, because when you realize, like, oh, I see the structure she's doing, it's a clear structure, but I don't know if it's as effective. Then you can turn around and put put all those insights onto your own writing, right? So what I want to say, I'm not trying to bash this person at all. I don't think this is a super bad personal statement. I do think it's a very early draft, but what I want you to take away from this exercise is like, oh, like let's read for more than just the content. Because if you're just reading it through, like, yeah, it's about when she was a little girl in high school and then in undergrad. Okay, it makes some kind of sense. But when you dig deeper, you're like, oh, in terms of revealing what their personal background is and how it's contributed to their thinking as a scholar, this is not as effective, right? But then we can start thinking about, oh, what is an effective structure for those things? So Erin, thanks for sharing. Any other thoughts about, reading this, about like what came to mind as you were reading? What were you thinking about? Were you reading for more than just content? What are some other thoughts? If folks don't want to share right now, that's totally okay. Feel free to put it in the chat. So, okay, going back to reverse outlining. So what you're doing is, you know, this is what all readers do. We read for content, but like dig deeper. Like, what is it? What is this paragraph doing for for the piece as a whole? So I'm going to break down each paragraph, right? So if I'm looking at the first paragraph, and I'm just going to read it aloud because it's short, and when you hear it, it's a little bit different than reading it in your head, right? So my will of pursuing a PhD degree can date back when I was a little girl. I've always been fascinated by the nature around me, and I enjoyed spending hours watching ants moving their food to their homes. Encyclopedia for Kids was my favorite book, and I read it again and again without getting bored. My father, a PhD and science researcher himself, was my role model, as he was renowned in his field and has even appeared on television several times. I admired my father very much and asked him how I could be like him. He smiled and told me to stay curious about the world around me and always be eager to learn more. At that time, I believed being a PhD can gain admiration from others and aimed to pursue a PhD in order to become a great person like my father. So if I'm like unpacking this paragraph, so I'm seeing like, what's it about? So I'm thinking about the content. So it's about childhood, right? And then what is it doing? What is it doing for the piece as a whole? So in my mind, it sets up the fact that they wanted to get a PhD since they were young. Like that's what's the purpose of that paragraph, right? Not just like what it's about, but like what is it doing? Next paragraph. Entering high school, I had a different goal of pursuing a PhD to use my knowledge to help underrepresented people and to solve their living issues. To better understand the world around me, I have been actively participating in volunteering activities since high school. Okay, so imagine I read through that whole thing. So what I got from this paragraph is experience about going to a service trip in Cambodia, right? And then what is it doing? To me, it sets up how their curiosity got piqued with the public health field. Okay, so first couple sentences of the next paragraph. My undergraduate studies in University of California, San Diego shaped my will of pursuing a PhD to an even higher level. I learned from my undergraduate biology courses and was impressed that diseases like smallpox and tuberculosis that are once thought deadly are now treatable and well under control, all thanks to scientists who discovered vaccines and antibiotics. So this paragraph, what it's about content-wise, is about this person's undergrad experience. It sets up how they want to make medicine more available and attainable. And then this very last paragraph, I believe Johns Hopkins University is the best platform for me to pursue my PhD degree. So it concludes why they want to go to this particular program. Okay, so like I said, this is not like this activity can be helpful for both unpacking great writing and not so great writing. This, like I said, I think it's very like a very early draft. But what you have done on the side, right? So the notes that you have taken, not only are like, what is it about, but what does it do? Now you've created your own outline on what to do, right? So say you reverse outline a really successful Goldwater research essay. And if you do this activity, then you have created an outline for yourself. I don't know about you all, but when it comes to writing, sometimes it's all the ideas are like jumbled in my head. So if I have an outline, I feel like, oh, I have structure, I have some kind of direction. So this is what this activity is intended for you to do. Come up with that structure. So let's apply this. So I know this is not what you're doing. I know a personal statement is not what you're doing. It's a totally different genre, but this was a very straightforward example of how to apply reverse outlining technique. So let's do it to something that is a little bit more applicable to what you're doing. So give me just a second. So as I'm switching out and sharing you a new screen, like how does that resonate with you all? Does that make a certain kind of sense? Do you have any questions about reverse outlining? Have you ever thought about writing in this way? Can we just get some thoughts before we move on?
I felt like it made sense. I think I've reverse outlined before, but like I didn't know it was reverse outlining. But
Yeah.
just like looking at other people's essays to get inspiration and like guidance on like how I should structure mine.
Absolutely. And I think that's, honestly, when I talk to a lot of students, they do this instinctually, which I think is like, keep going that direction. Like this feels like the right thing to do, right? But to have a name to it, it makes it like, it's like, oh, okay, now I know what I'm doing. But it also like, and there are like different levels of reverse outlining, you can make it pretty superficial, like, oh, this is about her high school and this is about like why they want to be a PhD, pursue their PhD. But it could be even deeper, like what anecdotes do they talk about? How does it tie to the values of the scholarship? How do they explain their research interests? Like it all depends on the questions that you force yourself to answer when you are looking at each paragraph. But what I like is that it forces you to slow down. It forces you to see how other people, it's like reverse engineering, like a successful application, right? A successful research essay. So that's what I like about it, in that there's like some concreteness to it when writing can feel so like uncertain, and there's like so many possibilities to how you can write something. So this is what I really like about this technique. There's one more thing I wanted to say about reverse outlining. Oh, I think something I do want to say about this is not just for the Goldwater scholarship, but for all types of scholarships, is that every time they ask you to write about something, there's always like an implicit message underneath, right? At least that's what good nuanced writing is. Like there's something going on underneath. Like there's a reason an applicant chooses to tell a story. There's a reason an applicant chooses to highlight a certain characteristic or a value, right? And I think that is kind of like the X factor of good writing. Whereas like if you looked at the example that I gave you, it's pretty straightforward. There's really nothing going on underneath the text, right? There's like, yeah, she's basically just talking about high school, college, little girl, high school, college, that's it, right? But let's look at something that again is going to be more applicable to you. So I found this on the website, or actually I just Googled it. I just Googled successful Goldwater scholarships. So let me share this screen. Okay, so my understanding is that Goldwater, they have the research essay, but then they also have like these short answer questions. Is that right? Is this still true for this year that they have like these kind of smaller questions?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So let's unpack this a little bit. This is a perfect activity to unpack, right? So, okay, what are your professional aspirations? Indicate in which areas of mathematics, science, or engineering you are considering making your career, and specify how your current academic program and your overall education plans will assist you in achieving this goal. So we're going to reverse outline this like together, okay? Only 2 paragraphs. So few generations have had the amazing power to impact our environment on a worldwide scale. Even fewer generations have realized humankind could have such a large impact on the earth. The past century has seen many advancements in technology and quality of life. These great achievements have also given humankind the power to permanently alter our earth and its fragile ecosystems. It is important to improve our quality of life, but it is also important not to compromise that of future generations by sacrificing our natural environment. My professional aspirations are to lead a team conducting research on new methods to reduce and control pollution output from industrial chemical processes. My research will be performed either in an industrial setting or in combination with teaching as a college professor. Okay, so content wise, what is this paragraph about? So just say it out loud or put it in the chat.
Just wondering, can we also have access to this PDF?
Yes, I will send it to you all afterwards.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So any thoughts about what this is about? Just the first paragraph. Okay, so to me, this is about, okay, talking about like the amazing advancements that humankind has accomplished, right, in the last few generations. Those are like the first 3 sentences, right? But do you all notice like a shift in this paragraph? And where is that shift? I'm talking about like, oh, we've accomplished so many things, we've done so many things that have impacted humankind on a large scale. But then there does seem to be like some kind of shift in the paragraph. Where do you guys sense that shift? Future plan, my professional aspirations. Yes, absolutely. It's interesting because it's like this is what I'm talking about with like unpacking. So they set up like, oh, this person understands that so many so many advancements have been made in the past few generations, but then there's a shift, and it's like my professional aspirations definitely, but it's like it's also, it is important to improve our quality of life, but it's also important not to compromise that of future generations. So if we're thinking about like, oh, what does this paragraph do? This paragraph acknowledges the advancements that have been made, but also acknowledges that those advancements can have downsides, and that's what this person's professional aspirations are to conduct research that will limit the downsides, right? So again, you see how we're operating on like two different levels. One is like, what is it talking about? So it's talking about like advancements of the last couple of generations. And then what is it doing? It's setting up that like there are downsides to those advancements, and I want to minimize those. And that's what my professional aspirations are. Okay. Perfect. Okay, let's look at this next paragraph. My current academic program in chemical engineering provides knowledge of industrial chemical processes, along with a solid background in mathematics and chemistry. My current research project provides a jump start on the type of research I can expect to perform as a graduate student and as a professional investigator. Graduate school in chemical engineering provides the in-depth knowledge required to understand and improve pollution control in industrial chemical processes. A PhD degree will provide me with essential skills needed to develop my own research projects and lead a team of researchers. Okay, so this paragraph is much more straightforward, right? You notice how in the second paragraph there's like a setup, right? It's a setup of like, oh, okay, here are all the advancements we've made, but there are downsides, and I want to minimize those downsides. Like, that's an interesting choice, a writerly choice to make in the first paragraph. And in the second paragraph, very straightforward. It's like, here's my background. Here's the area of expertise I'm developing. Here's how grad school's going to help me, and here's what I intend to do, right? So in just looking at these two paragraphs, if that is how you're reverse outlining, then you can apply it to your own experiences, right? Like, what is something that is good, but there are downsides to it, and I can help alleviate those downsides? What are my backgrounds? What are my skills? What's my background? What's my area of expertise? So you can follow that structure, right? Yeah, I just want to pause here. How is this resonating with you all? What are your thoughts so far? Is this helpful? Is this making you think about answering the questions in a different way, or just having like a different approach toward answering the questions? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to continue to scroll through this. This is like a wealth of information. So that's the other thing too, y'all, is like, look, there's so many resources online. I just think the key is like understanding how to use those resources and understanding how to like understand those resources. Because like I just Googled this. This is like one of the first things that popped up. But if you don't know how to look at it, and if you don't know how to use it to your advantage and help you in your own process, then I think it's not as helpful, right? So hopefully these skills I'm teaching you, you're like, oh, okay, so I can go and find another successful example of a Goldwater scholarship and do the same exact thing. Okay, so we're gonna scroll through. There's like a bunch of little short answer questions, right? This is also really helpful too, because as you notice, these are really concise. They're really short, right? So when you can reverse outline like a successful example, that can also show you what you need to include. Because I'm sure there's like so much going on in your head. You want to talk about like what inspired you in the first place, what you want to do with it, what you're working on. Like, there's so much to write about, and sometimes it's hard to know how to cut it. So reverse outlining other people's successful applications can help you decide, oh, this is what I should include, because this is what they included, and they didn't talk about like this first one that we just reverse outlined didn't necessarily talk about their inspiration, like why they got started, right? So this is also a useful activity in like, what do I include as a writer? And so when you can kind of unpack paragraph by paragraph, you can see how other people structure their writing and what they include. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll down to the research essay part. It's this right here. So we don't need to read through it because it's probably very dense, but I just kind of want to look over structurally what's going on, right? So, okay, there's the title. So it looks very much like a proposal, where they're like explaining the background, right? But then you'll see, remember how earlier in this workshop I talked about, the perspective you need to have in a research essay is that, like, if you think about it, like, what's the purpose of a research essay? Why did they ask you to write a research essay instead of a personal statement? It's because they want to see that you have some level of expertise, that you know what you're talking about, that you're not just someone who like, oh, I'm going to apply to Goldwater, and you're just like, I want to do research, right? They want to see that you have some experience, that you have, experience in thinking like a researcher, sorry. You have experience in doing research. You're like familiar with the language, right? So that's what the purpose of a research essay is. So let's see how this applicant like shows that they're an expert, or they're like a developing expert in this field, right? So they talk about their research like in the first 3 paragraphs, but then this is where they have that perspective of like their role in it. So I'm just going to read this paragraph, okay? In my undergraduate research project, the work of Jones et al. Has been extended to 2 strains of the bacterium, has been shown to degrade both TCE and this word, molecules representative of many halogenated pollutants. Injection of this bacterium into polluted soil is a promising method of bioremediation, but bacterial adhesion to soil prevents movement through porous media. As the particles adhere to the bacteria are less likely to be transported through small micropores in the soil. It would be advantageous to decrease adhesion in order to enable the bacteria to better disperse through polluted soils during in situ bioremediation. So what I get from that as a reader, what I get from that is like, this person is like really involved in this project. They're not just like peripherally involved, or they're just like, cleaning the lab or something. Like, they understand what they're doing in this lab. And that's the takeaway I have as a reader, right? That this person has that level of expertise. So what you're doing in the research essay is, explaining what you're doing, not only explaining it, but kind of like, showcasing your ability to talk through it, that you understand what's going on, that you understand that you are part of like a bigger thing. Okay, so let's scroll through it and kind of like continue to check out the structure. So there are plenty of visuals, right? So it's not just text. And in the info session that we had with Dr. Artis, he was like, that's actually really encouraged it as well, like to have different ways to relay information about the work that you're doing. So I see just at like a cursory glance, it's more of like an explanation of what we're seeing. I like this. Future work will include additional oriented adhesion experiments substituting spheroidal colloidal particles for bacteria. So I see that there's like a forward-looking aspect to this. I see the references, like even the references, I have some kind of takeaway as a reader. Like, I'm like, okay, this person knows how to cite. They know how to use references. They know that their project is just one small aspect of maybe a bigger project. So we continue to look through. So this is more responses to select questions. But I think this is what I really wanted to show you all, was like this research essay component, in just showing like how, like, what are the implicit messages of the research essay. And to me, like, if I'm just reading this, it's like, okay, this person is involved in a pretty significant way. This research project, they understand the research project, they understand the language, they understand what they're doing, and they're giving me an idea of what they want to do in the future. Can you all tell me, like, are you at this phase? Like, what are you planning on writing for your research essay? Are you planning on writing something that you've already done or that you want to do? Can you either say it or put it in the chat?
I think I just got finished with all the other aspects except the research project section and the research essay part.
Yeah.
What I'm planning to do is I'm planning to write about my ongoing one because that is actually my independent project, BISP 199 in biology department, and that is like what I'm currently like doing several other like college programs, like FMP, McNair, and all this. So I want to write about the one that is ongoing, and I already have like abstracts for it, so I can expand on that abstract. But what I was wondering, like, this individual uses data.
Uh-huh.
Well, if this is ongoing, then I probably think we're not allowed to use any unpublished data.
Mm-hmm. To me, if it's like unpublished yet, like I feel like those aspects, they're just like technicalities, I would just say it like this is still ongoing. So far, this is what the data reveals. This is in by no means like a conclusion, but this is what I see so far. Like I think if you're like upfront with it in the essay, I think that it's okay.
Like, I can attach a graph,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. I think
Oh,
graphs are good because it shows that there are multiple ways to understand the research that you're doing, and you're like earnest about showing the reader like, oh, this is what I'm working on. Some things are better explained through graphs and visuals than just text.
oh, perfect. I think that was also a question of Kalisha. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing
Yeah.
it right. Because usually when we're given like an ongoing project, we usually do proposal rather than the thing. When it's published, we do actually a whole thing. Well, we do presentations, posters, and all that. But I think with what you said, what I'm gonna do, I might go ahead and ask my PI
Hmm.
to for permission to, like put some like ongoing data there, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like to your question, if we read about ongoing project, would that be more of a proposal? I would say that you would approach that more as if you were like reflecting on it, like this is what I've learned from this so far. Um, and it kind of depends on like, do you want to continue to go on with it? Because with an ongoing project, the way that I understand it is like it can be ongoing, but you're done with it. Like you yourself, you want to move on from the project, but it is an ongoing project. If that's the case and you're moved on from it, then I would say that you're writing about it more from a reflective point of view. But like I was telling Aaron, it's more like, oh, this is still ongoing, so this is not conclusive by any means, but in my time with the project, this is what I found. But if you want to continue on with the project, then it could be more of a proposal. I think these are the types of questions that are good to talk with uh, Dr. Sai, but these are good questions because they're like specific to you, right? Like, because again, it could be like it is ongoing, but you're done with it. You're ready to move on to a different project. Because I think it's wanting to know like what you're interested in, right?
What it's ongoing. So it's ongoing, but I'm also ongoingly
You're
research.
going with it too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I think that because it's already been kind of established, because the way I see a proposal in this context is more like this is what I want to do and this is what I think might happen. It's like no work has been done on that topic at all. That's how I see the proposal working in this context, right? But because it's ongoing, you already know a little bit about the project. You already know the direction. You already know, like you already have some findings. So for the purposes of this assignment, I think an ongoing project, if it's ongoing and you are ongoing with it, then I think you still are looking at it from like a reflective point of view. I feel like the proposal is like if it's something that it's like for people who haven't done any research at all, so they can't write about like they can't reflect on anything, right? So they have to write a proposal type of for their research essay because they haven't done any research. But if all of you have done ongoing stuff, then I think that's an opportunity for you to reflect.
Oh, I think I got the idea of the proposal and the abstract confused for a second. What I
Mhm.
this is an abstract, so meaning we already have an ongoing,
Yes.
already have an established data. So
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect.
Again, like it kind of like whenever I'm confused about something, this is like in my life overall, not just writing. I'm like, why would they ask for this in the first place? Why would they want me to write about this? When I kind of put myself in those shoes, then I'm like, oh, okay. So for me, it's like, okay, why would they say you can either write about ongoing research or a proposal? And it's like, oh, it's probably because the proposal is for people who haven't had any kind of research experience yet. So they don't want to exclude people just because they didn't have research experience. So they want to give them an opportunity to write about something. You know what I mean? So when I put myself in that position of like, what's the purpose of this? Then that kind of helps me a little bit more feel like have a bit more direction in my writing. Yes. So other thoughts. I just want to hear from other folks. Like, what are like the roadblocks you're running into? What are kind of the questions that are revolving around the writing aspect of the research essay for you, Audrey or Emily? Do you have any thoughts or questions?
I'm still stuck on deciding if I want to write the abstract or the proposal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I'm sure there are examples online too. Like, just keep looking for more Goldwater, like sample nominees essays for Goldwater scholarships. See how they've gone about things. Because I feel like there are like Dr. Sai said, there's really no preference, whether it is a proposal or whether it's ongoing. So really just see if there are examples online and see if it fits what you're doing specifically, and then do the reverse outlining to it as well. So what I want to ask you all, what is going to be more helpful to you? Is it going to be more helpful for me to give you like time to write right now, or is it more helpful to kind of continue to go through like this sample and like talk about like, oh, okay, this is how we can think about the writing? What would be more helpful for you three right now?
Voting for the latter.
What? Say that again.
Voting for the latter one.
The latter. Okay. Like continue to go through it.
Continuing.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. Let's continue to look through this. Through the sample. So there's we just went through sample number 1. Let's look at sample number 2. Okay. So let's look through this whole thing. What? Oh, this is a good one. Okay. So a lot of graphs, a lot of visuals. Let's kind of check out the tone in each one. And see if we can replicate that, or why the writer chose that particular tone. So in just looking at this, so the nano indentation interrogation of float glass for elastic modulus and hardness. Okay, so I see that it is very explanatory for the first 3 paragraphs. So some takeaways that you can take from this is like, there's not much like personal perspective, right? So something that you might be taken aback from when it comes to like an essay, because when we hear essay, we think it's like from our point of view, right? But that's something interesting as we go through these samples is like, oh, okay, like there's not really talk about themselves. So let's just look at this first paragraph. Contemporary window glass is made by the float bath process to ensure that both sides are perfectly parallel and smooth. The molten glass batch is poured from the melting tank onto a bath of molten tin. As the glass floats across the tin, it cools. It then flows off the bath onto rollers that it takes through an annealing layer to remove thermal stress. As the glass rolls out of the layer, it is cut into pieces for further processing. Tin is chosen for the float because of its low reactivity with soda, lime, silica glass. However, it is not perfectly unreactive because contaminants enter the tin bath and changes chemistry. Some of the tin diffuses into the float side of the glass as SN2 positive and SN4 positive. The diffusion of tin is governed by many factors, including the composition of the glass and the time spent on the float bath. The thicker the glass is, the longer it spends on the bath. Consequently, the tin has more time to diffuse. The diffusion process typically produces a hump in tin content as shown. Okay, let's reverse outline this. What is this about? What is the content of this? Like, I notice is very step by step, like talking about this experiment and what happens to tin, right? Like, this is also something that can be really helpful. It's like this person is choosing to be very explicit about the steps, right? Or at least like the problem. I think this is a little bit more explicit than the first one in this in this one. This one, I feel like I understood like the problem a lot quicker, but it kind of depends on your research. If your research requires a little more explanation, that's also something to think about. Then you have to take that time to explain it, right? So it's really interesting how these two writers chose to present their research, right? This one, where it's like bacterial adhesion can cause industrial equipment biofouling, medical implant failure, and is a problem for in situ bioremediation of polluted soils. Despite extensive studies, mechanisms of bacterial adhesion remain inadequately understood. This makes it difficult to treat or control biofilm formation, which is a long-term goal of this research. Like, I understand what the problem is and what their research is right away in student number one's application, right? In number two, it seems like it's more of a setup. Like, I don't really understand yet what the problem is or what they're trying to do or what they're trying to address, right? So even in the second paragraph, traditionally the bottom side of the float glass is used as the external side of the glass when it is used in applications such as automobile windshields and commercial windows. This side was found to perform better during normal use. A better understanding of this phenomenon is desired in order to improve the mechanical and chemical durability of these glasses for future application. So only in that sentence did I understand why all of this is significant, right? So it's really kind of two different approaches. Like, one seems very technical. The second one seems super technical. So they opened up with like a graph right away, right? A visual right away. So those are the things that you can think about when it comes to your own research project. Like, is it very technical? Do I have to explain it? Because that's the other thing that people, I think, when they write like confusing research proposals, or if you're going to write a confusing essay, is like you don't provide enough context. So this person, it looks like it's very technical and they're like working to provide that context so that it makes sense why they're doing this research in the first place. What are your thoughts on these two different approaches? How does it kind of relate to your own research project? Is your research really technical? Do you think that you'll need to explain a lot before you go into why you're trying to solve this problem?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who's reading like our research proposals or abstracts? Is it
For the scholarship?
yeah? Is it sorry? Like, is it people? Is there going to be like people in different fields reading like, or is it just
Yeah, I think it's definitely not like your average person. You know, it's not definitely not me. But I think it's people who, I think it's from different fields. I think it's like a panel of different fields in math and science and chemistry. You know, like, I think it's but they're experts. So that's why it's hard to nail down the context part. So I think like you can be confident in that it's not like your average person. It is some expert in their field, but I think it's a variety of fields. But you bring up a really good point, Audrey, which is the audience. Like, who is this for? Because you would change the way that you explain things based on who it's for, right? If they said, oh, your audience is like a typical college student, you would need to maybe take the reader step by step a little bit more, right? But I think it's safe to say that the people reading are experts, even if they're not your particular field, they're experts, right? So they can see like, oh, are they talking about this in a way that is a scientific way? Are they thinking like a researcher? They can still pick up on those things, even if they don't know exactly what you're talking about, right? Yes, thanks, Emily, for finding that. So while the disciplinary reviewers who will be reviewing your essay and application will be broadly familiar with work in your discipline, it is unlikely our viewers will be experts in your subfield. Furthermore, if your application needs to undergo a secondary review, the review may be done by an individual from another discipline. Write your research essay and other materials for individuals who are broadly trained in the science, engineering, and mathematics, not for the subject matter experts. Yeah, and I think like a good rule of thumb is like, when it comes to writing, I'm just going to be really honest. When it comes to writing, I think students get nervous about their level of expertise. So they try to sound smart. They try to like make their proposal or their writing super convoluted so that they sound smart, but it's just really confusing. And I think like with the panel, whoever is on the panel, they can see through that because they're like, okay, I don't know exactly about contemporary window glass, but this person is confusing, right? So I think like the best way to go is like, just be sure that it's clear to you, like you know what you're talking about. You're not trying to embellish. You're not trying to sound smarter than you are. You're just being like as clear as possible. Clarity, I think, is like the goal for this, not to necessarily sound like, oh, I sound like this hoity-toity researcher who's been in the field for 20 years. That's not your goal, right? So I think if you're writing it in a way that's clear to you, then I think that will come through no matter who your readers are, who your reviewers are. But I think that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up, that point about audience. Other thoughts, Erin or Emily, about like what you'll be writing about? Do you see yourself using either one of these approaches, like either very technical explanation or like, just a straightforward, this is the problem, here's what my research, here's how I intend for my research to help solve this problem? Do you see yourself using either of those structures?
Wait, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Do you see yourself, based on the research you might write about, using either of these structures that these students use? So the first student, it was like very straightforward, very clear, like why their research was going to answer a specific question, this bacterial adhesion. The glass one was like a little bit more technical, so it needed a lot more explanation. Just wondering if anybody sees themselves using either of these structures.
I think I'll probably end up using the structure of the second essay because I think, well, I haven't decided what research or like I want to write about, but I think given my options, it seems like I need to build up a lot of context to motivate what I'm doing.
It sounds like people are in a place of like, I'm not quite sure what to write about. And because the deadline is coming up soon, I would say that like whatever project you can write about that shows your level of expertise or your capacity for expertise, go with that one, right? Even if it's not the one that you're most passionate about or something, right? Because I think the purpose of what they want to see in this, in the research essay is like your potential in research, like what you already have and what you possibly could have in the area of research, right? So really think about like what project really showcases that for me, like what showcases like my potential for research and my budding expertise in this area. I would say go with that. Like really think about like what showcases that more, and then go with that. And then see if you can write that out. We have a small group, so I don't know if it's like absolutely necessary to put us into breakout rooms to write, because that was my original thought if we had like a really big group. But what I want to offer, so I'm going to stop sharing. What I want to offer, because the application is due January 12th, right? So the quarter starts back up, like we're back in session January 8th. I want to say, like, you guys, I'm opening the invitation for you to reach out to me and send me an email, and we can make some time that week to go over your research essay. So hopefully this session that we have right now pushes you, encourages you, inspires you to start writing and thinking through, like, what is that research that really showcases my ability to be a researcher? How can I think about my writing in a different way? How can I structure it? I want you to be thinking about that in the winter quarter. I'm sorry, over the break. And then when we come back, please feel free to email me and be like, hey, this is what I have. Can I go over it with you? And we'll make a time so that we can meet during that week, so that you feel really strong about your writing when you turn it in January 12th. How does that sound? Is that something that would be helpful to you? Would you want to meet earlier? Like, what are some thoughts there?
I think that would be super helpful. I'll definitely reach out after I like finish drafting. And yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I will email you all. So I'll email you the PDF that we looked through together, and also some of the slides that we worked off of. But yeah, I'll send that along. Then you'll have my contact info. And yeah, I invite you to reach out to me that week, that first week, so that we can possibly look over your writing before you turn it in, or just like talk about your writing or go over it. Whatever might be helpful for you in that last week before you turn it in. Yes, Erin.
Can I pose a question before we go ahead?
Of course.
I was wondering if the other students had what are they choosing well, this is gonna be like more like about letters of
Oh,
recommendation. So have people chosen if they're gonna, like nominate professors from this quarter, fall quarter, or from their previous quarters, and have they reached out yet? So that was my question for everyone else.
I actually
Um,
had sorry.
oh, you can go.
I actually had a professor in mind, but she rejected me. So yeah. So I'm also kind of stuck on the recommendations compartment.
Question for you guys. Do you guys have at least one from a mentor? Because I don't have anything from my mentor. Mine is just gonna be like my professors.
Honestly,
Um,
I feel like, oh, sorry. I feel like I got pretty lucky. So I do have all three of my letter writers in mind, and I did contact them about it, and they all agreed. And
Junior or
um,
sophomore?
huh?
Sorry. Are you junior or sophomore?
I'm a junior.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a sophomore. So
Yeah, so I have a bit more time to like establish relationships. But they're actually also all research advisors of mine at some point. And then two of them were also professors for classes that I took.
okay, so one PI, two professors.
Or there were like three PIs, but two of them were also my professors.
So you
Yeah.
did participate in three different research experiences and three
Yeah.
of professors. Oh, okay. That
Mhm.
makes sense. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Well,
Erin, you know what I might suggest?
yeah.
It's like, just start emailing other possible mentors now. Maybe they won't get back to you in time to be your recommend, like to write anything for you for Goldwater, but it's always a good idea to have, like three or four that you could choose from. You know what I mean? So like use this time maybe to like reach out to professors, write emails, say, like, I'm looking for a mentor in this field, or, I admire the work you do in XYZ. And I would love to hear more about, like, I think students don't, you know, for whatever reason, like you're nervous or you don't know who to approach, but like that proactiveness, I think is kindly looked upon by professors. And I think that you can start doing that now, even for people that you, for people whose classes you haven't been to, you know?
Right.
I always encourage that. And if you need help, like putting together an email, I'm happy to help you in that, in
Thank you.
helping you like put together like a really nice worded email, like, hey, I'm really interested in this work that you do. Could you tell me more about it? Or could I like drop by your office hours? Those little things add up to possible mentorships. You know what I mean? And then like just being open in that way, because that's something that kind of gets in the way of applying for these things, right? Like Audrey, like that happens, right? Like professor is like, no, I don't have time for whatever reason. It has nothing to do with you, right? But then you're like, oh no, who do I talk to afterwards? You know, like after that person. So it's always good to have like 4 or 5 people in mind. And if you don't have them yet, because like you're younger in your college career, that's totally fine. Like start reaching out to people. Do a coffee with a professor. Reach out to people. I know we are just getting into winter break, but it's like, yeah, I noticed your office hours will be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2. Is it okay if I drop by in week 1? You know, like start being proactive in that way, because you know your mentors are not just limited to people whose class you took. Like you could, you know, like there's so many people, and who knows, you know, like maybe some professors have more time than others to cultivate mentees, but really like put yourself out there. And I think even if you don't get them in time for Goldwater, it's going to be useful to have mentors for other things that you apply for.
Yeah, that sounds a great idea. And so what I was basically, I have professors. I have professors, ton of professors like who can give me a letter. I've been elected for several different programs. So I have like reserved letters of recommendation.
That's
But the
great.
thing is, so I'm between this option A and option B. Sorry, this is very specific question. Option A and option B. And the reason I'm between this is that I don't know, like I posited this question for the other scholars if they know any specific details about eligibility for this letter. So basically, I don't know if they're gonna ask me for my one, at least for my research mentor. The reason is that so far I have letters. I've
Uh-huh.
been promised letters by professors who at least took 2 quarters, 2 quarters at UCSD.
Yeah.
But with my new research one, after the summer internship I finished, I've been only in the lab since August. So like 4 months, like more than like a quarter, but less than a 2 quarters. So here the deal for me is either take one of these professors out and bring in this mentor because this is significant to have at least one letter of
Mhm.
recommendation from a research mentor, or
Mhm.
just go by the look, I see that's the question. I'm getting confused how much significant is a letter from a professor, a faculty, or a research mentor. So I'm stuck there. I cannot make the
Mhm.
decision. I don't know to
Um,
yeah,
by research mentor, is it your professor, your PI?
my PI, not my professor. I didn't he's not teaching undergrad classes. He's only teaching medical school classes.
Oh, but he is a PI, right? So
He's
he is
both
like a
yeah,
professor at medical school,
yes.
or
Yeah.
I would think that it'd be best to go with the letter that shows your research progress.
I think so. What I will do then, I will reach out to him. I'll basically ask him for a letter. I think I've done that before. It certainly would be better than a professor that I took class with for 1 quarter. But like you said, you helped me with, understanding if it would be better than a professor I took 2 quarters with. So it is better because it's a research grant. It's research scholarship. It's not like academic scholar. I don't know if I'm conveying that through. Am I making sense?
No, you are. But you know what I'm seeing? And hopefully this is helpful to you all, but like don't think of it as like a student. Think of it as an applicant. You want to be the best applicant possible, right? Because I sometimes think that the student mindset is like, I need to cross all my T's and dot all my I's. You know what I mean? Like I need to jump through all the hoops. But this is like a very for a very specific program, for a very specific purpose. So your student mindset might be like, oh, let me get a letter from a professor who I've been with longer. But like, what does length of time mean for this opportunity? In my mind, I agree with Audrey. Like, length of time doesn't really matter that much because I'm looking for your potential, for your capacity for research. So even if you've only been in your lab for 4 months, I'd rather hear about your potential there than a professor who's had like hundreds of students. Do you know what I mean? So like that student mentality sometimes trips you up because you're like, oh, let me just do what I need to do to get an A, right? Like you're just like trying to like jump through the hoops, but you have to think of yourself as an applicant, have an applicant mindset, which is like, what is the best possible application I can put forward? What's the best case I can make for myself as a budding researcher? And if that's the case, then I absolutely agree with Audrey. Like that shows your potential for research more than you dotting your I's, crossing your T's, you know?
I agree, yeah. And one of the themes I guess I recently learned, I always thought, hey, like to be a Goldwater recipient, you have to have multiple publications. I think they're looking further in growth as
Yeah,
a undergraduate,
absolutely.
not like
Absolutely.
an already made undergraduate researcher.
Yeah. And again, that's like that student versus applicant mindset. A student might be like, oh, I need to have like all these accolades first before you even get this award or this opportunity. No, the opportunity is for you to get the experience to get accolades later. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not about like who's the most acclaimed student. That's who's going to get this award. To me, it's like, hey, we want to give opportunities for people who is the next generation of forward thinkers in these fields. Sorry, Audrey, did I cut you off?
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, I just have a very distinct problem with my recommendations.
Yeah.
Um, I've been like in a single lab for like just one lab for the
Mm-hmm.
most of my time here. So like I
Mm-hmm.
only have like one PI
Yeah.
basically that actually can write me a letter. I
Uh-huh.
didn't really reach out to um professors in my classes, so it's a bit tricky over there. So yeah.
And have you asked the PI for a letter yet?
Yeah, that I have. Yeah.
And are they going to write a letter?
They're gonna write a letter. So
Mm,
I come from a very big lab, so there's like a overseeing PI, and then underneath him there's also like two professors, or I
yeah.
wouldn't say professors, like one professor, and like
Yeah.
another senior scientist.
Yeah.
I could get letters from like the PI, the senior scientist, and the
Yeah.
assistant.
You know what I would suggest um, is okay, you're going to get letters because they're all from the same lab, right? They just have
Yeah,
different.
that's what I'm afraid of, because
Okay,
they're all from the same lab.
here's what you do. This is what you do. It's not a bad problem. You have to think of 3 distinct things you want them to write about. So let's just give an example. Okay. I'm just like going off the top of my head because I am not experienced in labs or anything, but just say like the senior scientists, you want them to write about your work ethic because they've seen you actually work, right? And then the PI, you want them to talk about your like curiosity. And then the senior person, you want them to talk about your like dedication. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like
Okay, I get it now.
identify for
Yeah.
yourself what you want them to write about, and then when you reach out to them to be like, hi, I'm applying for Goldwater and I would be honored for you to write me a letter. This is what I've learned under you, or this is what I've learned in my time with you. Do you know what I mean? Like give them something to write about, because a lot of times like I'm speaking from experience, I get a lot of requests to write like a letter of recommendation for grad school, for whatever. And because I'm a nice person, I say yes. But I like literally don't remember that person, right? But if they send me an email that's like, hi, Maggie, I used to be a writing tutor for you in 2018. What I really gained in my experience with you was XYZ. So you know what I mean? So it's like you're not telling them, hey, write about my dedication or write about my my work ethic or whatever, but you're giving them something to write about. Do you know what I mean? So you're not just like, can you write me a letter? And then they don't know what to write about, and like then you don't get your letter because it's kind of stuck. Do you know what I mean? But if you are proactive, not pushy, proactive, then you can kind of set up how you want the letter to sound for you. And then you're going to have 3 people write about your work ethic, your dedication, and your potential for that research field. You know what I mean? Then it's like, oh, okay. So now you're thinking like an applicant, right? Because, oh, these 3 aspects of myself make me a really strong applicant.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was thinking of differentiating the letters that way, but I was just afraid that like it'd be a red flag if all the
No,
letters came from the same lab.
no, no, no. I don't think it is because again, it's like these opportunities, they can't expect undergrads to have like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different experiences. Sometimes that's just all that there is, right? And like you can also put a positive spin on it, like, oh, look, she's dedicated to this lab. She's dedicated to this ongoing project. You know, like there's multiple ways to look at it. I honestly think it's the way that you frame it, the way that you write about it, the way that, you know, like yeah, it could be seen as a red flag as like, oh, she's not very experienced. But if you talk about it in that, oh, your level of knowledge is so deep, then that's a positive, right? So it really just depends on how you um present the information. And that's why that's what I wanted you all to get from this writing session is like, how am I presenting this information? Am I giving a lot of context, or am I being really straightforward about the problem? You know, it's all about like framing. So if you know, get yourself out of the student mentality, put yourself in an applicant mentality. And I don't think, you know, I don't think you have to worry about that, Audrey.
Thank you so much. That
Yeah,
clears it up a lot.
of
I have
course.
a question.
Yes.
Would you be able, so since this application contains multiple different short answers, would
Yeah.
you be able to like, would we be able to set up a, I don't know, session with you to go over all this essay app, components?
This is what I can promise. I can promise if you email me in that first week, I will respond to you. And either I will work with you or I will set you up with, because I have a team of writing facilitators, I'll set you up with somebody who I know can help you.
Perfect. And would they be able to go over like all this writing components, like
Yeah.
short
The
answers
thing
or
about it is like, you don't need somebody who has gone through Goldwater in order to help you, right? Like I'm like the way that I train tutors is helpful for any writing project, personal statements, scholarship essays. But I'll make sure that they know if I can't help you myself, then I'll make sure that they can help you. And also, like as you all, this is the last thing I'll say in this writing session because we're at time almost. But when it comes to those short answer questions, right? Again, make sure that it's revealing different aspects of yourself. So you're presenting the most qualified, impressive applicant, right? Don't say the same thing over and over. That's what I see a lot because, like, again, students are just trying to sound smart. They're just trying to like perform answers and they say the same things. Like, I'm so dedicated to this field. And they say that almost in every short answer question. Be very strategic. Like, okay, this question, I'm talking about my work ethic. This question, I'm talking about my passion for solving this issue. This question, I'm talking, you know, like be very clear and intentional about what each answer is doing. Don't just answer each question the same way, because that's what students do. They answer each question the same way in different words. And I don't think that is a strong application.